So let's get started. So my name is Leo Greffler. I'm one of the PMs with Workforce Engagement Management, and also here is Michelle Fisher, who is a PM for the Workforce Management side. And I have a dream job. With Genesys, I get to look at all the different things that are happening around AI and looking at where we can actually bring it into our Workforce Engagement Management products. So it's awesome. We get to see what's coming out and see how we can help Genesys clients with our products. So this morning, I'm going to be talking to you about preference-based scheduling with AI. But really what I'm going to be going into is how we're applying AI in workforce management. And some of the new tools that are coming out. What is it exactly? And also I'll be diving into a demo. So I'm going to be actually showing you what tools are used within PureConnect in order to actually get this AI-based scheduling or get employee preferences up and running. So one of the really kind of cool things about this is that this has a direct impact on agents in call centers. And some of these tools that we're going to be looking at can make them feel much better about their workplace and about what they're doing. Makes them feel more like adults, more like people who are, who are partners in their workforce, as opposed to people who are just being directed into what to do. So this is what really excites me about some of the things that we're working on. Now, when I was thinking about kind of a sci-fi parallel this is where I start to repeat the jokes. So I was thinking about a sci-fi parallel for what we're doing in terms of AI in workforce management. And here at Genesys, I was thinking, I was on the plane ride, I was looking at the window, and it finally hit me. Terminator Genesys. And who here has seen the movie Terminator Genesys? Thankfully, only one. One person here. I'm so happy because it was an awful movie. It was one of the few movies that I've had to actually stop in the middle of it, and I couldn't watch to the end. So I'm only basing this kind of metaphor on having watched maybe 30 minutes of the film. Something about like how Terminators can age so that they can cast an older version of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not really, it kind of boggles my mind. But one of the things that was part of it was the idea of an AI, battling out for the future. And in a small aspect, this is kind of what we're doing with some of the AI applications within workforce management. So I'll be talking to you a little bit about that. Now, to kind of calibrate the talk this morning, how many of you are like hands-on developer coders type people? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So thank goodness. And the rest of you are like planners, people who like figure out what's going to go in product or how you kind of deploy products. That kind of what you do. Okay. So that's good because only a couple people are going to know that I'm a big faker. So this is this is good. Don't tell anyone else when around you. So when it comes to kind of AI-based forecasting, what is it exactly? So what is AI-powered forecasting? And within Genesys Workforce Management Tools, basically it's a collection of 25 plus algorithms that are used to come up with absolutely the best forecast possible for your contact center. And that number is actually growing, so I think now it's 27 plus algorithms, and basically trying to figure out what's going to happen next in your contact center. What we do then is we actually have these algorithms valid out and try to figure out what it will do. We run all of them, and we find out what the best result is. And after that, we select it, and then we continually train it, and we continually compare it against different methods as they become available, and so that you're constantly getting absolutely the most accurate version of scheduling possible that's out there. So kind of at a deeper level, this is how it works under the hood. First, we get as much data as possible about your contact center in terms of call volumes. So anything that has a timestamp on it. So we want to know what's your call volumes, what's your average handle times. Not even your average, just what are your handle times for all those calls. If any employees are taking sick time, when they're taking sick time. If you have outbound interactions, what are the rates of outbound interactions, changes in wages. Anything that has a timestamp on it, we want any time series data. The next thing that we have to do is we have to kind of get rid of these outliers. So things that would prevent us from having an accurate forecast. So if there was a sudden spike because of an outage, those types of data are not really helpful when putting together a forecast. So we actually have to clean up the data before we can run it through the model. The next step is we start to look for patterns, and we start to break down. Is during specific periods of time are we getting closer to or further away from our service levels? What are the trends? Are there different cycles? So one of the things that my boss Cam mentioned in a session yesterday is that turns out in North America every third Wednesday all contact centers across all different industries end up getting a spike in interactions. It's just bizarre. I don't know why the third Wednesday in a month would happen. And this is in North America, not necessarily elsewhere in the world. It's because of paydays. It's kind of a strange phenomenon, but it's some of the things that we start to see when we aggregate this data. So we look for those trends, and those trends both globally for all contact centers as well as for specific contact centers can actually be used to generate new models. And after we do that, we do this kind of battle royale of these different AIs, where we run all of the different models, we compare them, and then afterwards we pick the best one and we constantly monitor it going forward. Now, how does this compare to kind of the regular way that you would go about doing forecast? And basically, it's a lot of manual and gritty work in order to put that together. So anyone involved in doing forecasting or scheduling here? So you know it even better than me. So the work that's involved in getting a forecast together. And you can definitely correct me. I am open to correction at any point. But usually it involves gathering a lot of data about call volumes, about handle times, about all of those metrics that I was discussing. Kind of going through and manually cleaning out all of those outliers or all of those things that we can't really use this because there was a labor action or there was a sale on during that time, or we're adding a new channel to go through, so we can't really use that. Once the data is cleaned out, you then build your actual forecast, and this might be done in Excel sometimes. It might be done with some other tools, but it's a very intensive process. You then kind of have to look at it and kind of eyeball it, the forecast afterwards, and say, is this really accurate? I think I need to make a few kind of adjustments here, just based on intuition. Then after you have that forecast together, then you go out and build your schedule. Say, okay, I think third Wednesday of every month there's going to be a spike, so I'm going to make sure that I have a couple extra agents that are available during that particular time, because that's what the forecast is saying. And then after that, you adjust it as required. That adjustment as required can also be a very labor-intensive process, and can mean also a very kind of static type of model, where if you end up adding any additional channels, or you change the way your contact center handles interactions, you then have to update and change the model altogether. So it can be incredibly intensive. So not being a scheduler myself, I'm going to look to the back of the room. Is that kind of accurate? I'm getting some nodding heads. Maybe they're afraid to disagree with me, but you can if you want. But they're saying it's accurate, so hopefully that's the case. So part of the kind of magic of AI-powered forecasting might not even be the AI part of it. It might actually be the automation part of it. It's having that data readily available, having it integrated into one place so that you can actually pull that data automatically. You can bring it into a model. You can clean it up, and then you can build that forecast and that schedule automatically after that. So that's part of the part of the magic, so to speak. It's not even necessarily the AI component of it; it's the automation component. So what are some of the kind of the benefits that come out of this? So reducing errors and saving time. That's kind of the biggest thing. Is a lot of that manual process ends up being reduced because you have kind of one spot where you can kind of bring in all of that data automatically, and all the time we're adding and kind of battling new AIs for dominance in the most accurate forecast. And marketing message. We're the first AI-powered forecasting system. I guess it's a good thing. Yeah, people really should really put that in the slide there because it talks about how we're first to market. But man, we have a lot of experience in doing scheduling and doing forecasting and bringing new models. So how does it look when you actually you apply AI to your forecast? What is this kind of magical experience that happens? And I'm sorry to say, it is extremely boring. There is nothing. It doesn't look like anything. You press a button and you get a forecast, and there's no fireworks. There's no wizard or anything like that pops up. It's the same way that we built a forecast before. It's just we're applying AI behind the scenes in order to make it more accurate. So we're going to see that process now, or at least in a couple of minutes. But you click a button, you get a forecast. You see it, you adjust it, you click another button, you get a schedule. It's nothing really magical. But the key thing, of course, is that it's very fast. That it doesn't take days. I think one of the other kind of interesting data points is that it's something like a manual process would take 13 days, takes 45 seconds, and I don't know if that 13 years involves any courses or anything like that, but they just say it reduces a lot of labor in actually putting it together and going through these different methods. And the other benefit, of course, is growing all the time. So where is it available? So we have it available on PureCloud. We have it available in PureConnect, which we're going to see. So how many people here are PureConnect users? Okay, good, all right. Keep to the right sessions. That's good. We're going to show you PureConnect. It's also available in PureEngage. So again, one of these benefits is that just the amount of time that it's going to be saving over just a manual process. So kind of reviewing how it works. We take the data, we clean up the data, we look for different patterns in it, and then as we're looking for different patterns, we're then running these different models, and we're spitting out the best model, and that's continually improving over time. Yeah. First question.
Just really quick. What version of PureConnect is it supported?
This is Michelle is here, so this is perfect. So yeah.
No, don't be sorry. It's R219, which just came out, and R319, which is coming up, is going to be AI-powered scheduling.
So good.
And the other good news is once you've upgraded, there is a bit of an ordering process because it triggers a workflow. It's a $0 sellable item you have to quote, so it costs nothing to use it. But there is some configuration work that needs to be done on the server side. But then it will be available in the forecast wizard that you use to select what method you want to use as AI powered. And the same thing will be true for the scheduling. But if you enable the AI powered forecasting before the scheduling is available, you won't have to do the back end work again.
So if you have any of those tools, you have it basically. There's no additional cost to having AI-powered scheduling as part of it. So kind of more behind the scenes, how we're actually how the AI modeling is working is that we'll first start by taking in as much data as we can about about your contact center. So all of your call volumes, interactions. We'll then start to train our models around that data. And when I say train the model, we train all of the models around that data. We'll then look forward different periods of time. I think we look forward about 10 to 12 steps and test out the models. And then once we find the models that are actually most accurate, we'll then use that to forecast going forward. And ongoing, we'll then see how accurate that forecast was and update the model. Continually run these tests over time, so that we might be switching models in order to make sure that the forecast remains accurate. We can do it both for short term as well for longer term modeling as well. So this is how basically the same models are used for whether it's looking ahead for the next shift period or looking forward for months to years. We use kind of the same technology behind the scenes. So this is another kind of marketing slide that says, hey, a lot of people are using us, so we must be great. I'm not sure how many of you are using the workforce management, but probably a good number of them. But who wants a demo? A few people. Some people don't want a demo? Okay, fine. If you don't want a demo, I'm not going to be offended. So let's jump into this. All right, so you're going to see. Wow, you didn't have to see me log into anything. That's already a huge win over. You guys are benefiting from this being the second time we've run through this presentation. So what we're looking at is something called Interaction Optimizer. And I apologize, the font is super small, so I'm not expecting you to read what's on here. I will narrate this as I go along. But essentially within the IC Business Manager, there's a little tab called Interaction Optimizer, and we can use it to start to configure the way we set up schedules and forecasts. And this is where we can use this employee preferences. We can start to gain employee preferences for doing our scheduling and also our forecasting. So the first step is we start to configure things. So we can configure some basic rules. We can configure what are the service level agreements that we need to meet. So in this particular setup, we said that 80% of our calls need to be answered within 20 seconds. So that was kind of one, and we specified which work groups need to meet that specific service level. We can then define for what period of time we're going to be doing considering something a short-term forecast versus a long-term forecast. We can also configure what our shrinkage is for a particular period. We can have that set up automatically, or we can actually go in and configure that manually. For scheduling, for when we're pulling together a schedule, we can look at, do we side more towards the agent's preference for time, what they've set as their preferred work times, or do we move more towards a bias of getting our service level met? So which one do we can adjust this? And this doesn't necessarily apply to the forecasting, but applies to how we create the schedules in order to match things. And again, we can manage our shrinkage this way for different periods of time. If we think, for example, that we might get a little bit more shrinkage after after a big sporting event, or like the day after the Super Bowl, there might be kind of more people showing up late for work. We might increase the shrinkage this way and be able to account for it in our scheduling. Then the next thing is we could set what's time off, and how's it set? Well, what's the work week? How many hours per day? What's the kind of minimum time off that can be requested? And the idea of this is to kind of take the contact center manager out of having to do those tasks of, hey, my cat's sick, or my cat has a dance class next week, and can I book some time off? There's nothing funny about cat dance classes. It's very serious.
Talented cat.
It is very talented. So does the manager really need to be involved? Like, I really want to know about all my agents, cats. I mean, maybe, like, I don't want to have to, like, think, wonder, is it justified or not? Just here's the policies that we can set around time off, and the agents can then go in and can run that. We can see, if they've accrued time off, what the accrual rules are for basically getting time off. How long do they have to work before they can start to kind of get time off? We can also look at what are called adherence exceptions. So when someone is, let's say, a certain number of minutes late for their shift, is that considered to be an adherence exception? Or do we do it, after a break? What activity, are they late for that we're going to set this up? And this can again be used to form those rules. So after we've kind of configured this, other cool stuff we can do. Well, we can set up our shifts. What are the actual shifts that we need to fill? Are there any particular constraints for those shifts? Is there a shift rotation? What are the types of staff? So in terms of their capabilities, is there a language requirement that's needed for a particular staff, or a knowledge requirement? This can actually be set up through this configuration tool. And then we can also set up what's called shift trading, or rules around shift trading. This is my favorite part of it, which is imagine letting your agents figure out between them if they're going to be off work to get someone else to fill in for them. Isn't that amazing? Like as a manager, I'm happy. It's like I don't even need to know why you're not here, because I know that someone else is going to be there to meet the service levels for me. So I'm not going to be short-staffed because it's all done automatically behind the scenes. So you can set up rules around that. How many hours in advance can an agent trade their shift? What's the minimum shift trade? So you can set these up and then just allow your agents to manage this process on their own automatically. And of course, you can also see what's happening. So it's not like it's not going to kind of run away on you. You can actually monitor what's happening. But you can set all of this up, and we'll see what that looks like in much bigger font in a few minutes. So we're back. It's also good for you to be able to see the screens. So the other part of it is, now that we've done that, we can look at our time off planning. So we can look at what's an accrual plan for time off. Like I mentioned, we can actually configure the different rules around automatically allowing for time off, or setting time off by different agents. And we can see what our agents have accrued in terms of time off. We can look at what have been the time off requests and what are the time off plans. So once we've configured all of that, we can now go in and we can start building our forecast. And we can look at both short-term forecasts or long-term forecasts. So here are some forecasts that have already been run, and so I can pick one of these now, and basically, I can get a sense of what's my forecast for a particular day. Let's say a Wednesday, and I can also see what is the, what's the likelihood, what are the particular work groups? I think here it's exactly, it's very similar. I can look at different interaction types that I forecast for, and I can even look at skill sets, what are the skills, what are the interactions that are expected. I can look at what what's my forecasted average handle time. And again, I can. This is based off of the data that's been run for the particular contact center that we're forecasting here. Now, what's the difference between a regular forecast and an AI-powered forecast? Well, it's this little icon, and you simply once it's enabled, you start to get this little icon for AI-powered forecast. And let me set up as a bad example. But, okay, that doesn't. So basically, it's generating a forecast exactly the same way, but we can look at what are average handle time spikes after call work. We can forecast for. You can compare it between what was forecast and what was the actual average time for after call work. So yeah, that's all that's involved is just we enable this AI powered forecasting, and it now becomes part of the regular forecasting. So let's take a look at how things look from an agent perspective. Oh wait, before I do that, there's just one more thing. So once we've developed the forecast, we can now develop our schedules. So we've run a forecast, and now we can actually schedule, create a schedule based on that. So here's a schedule that's been created, and now we've scheduled all of our agents in order to meet our expected forecast. We got a question for that.
Is the AI-powered scheduling able to do greater than 1 week at a time?
Yes.
So it can just...
Yes, it uses all the available historical data to it.
Okay.
So what you can specify for what period of time you want to schedule for.
Yeah, that's why I asked, because you're required to do the short-term creation of the schedule before you can actually build a schedule up for it.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you're able to do your full forecasting for, like, say, the year, and you can go in and just build a schedule off of that.
Yeah.
Or do you still have to do 1 week at a time?
Yeah. You
Oh,
definitely
on
don't have to.
PureConnect, you will have to do it 1 week at a time.
That's what I was asking.
Oh, okay. So Michelle knows a lot more than me about this, but she can correct it. But yeah, and also, building, you might not want to build a schedule for like in 40 weeks from now. Like, who's going to be up there on a Tuesday? Because the call volumes, of course, can change it. So here we've created a schedule. We can go out and we can publish the schedule. Then after we've done this, we can look at all the kind of the trading requests that have come from this. Let's jump into the agent side. Before we do that, we'll take one question.
Yeah. How is the AI-powered preference-based scheduling going to be different than like the slider bar all the way to the preference type and
So the slider bar is for scheduling. The forecasting is where the AI is happening.
So this session is about preference-based scheduling?
We're gonna look at that. Yeah. So the when we're setting up the actual scheduling, when we're doing that configuration, we did the configuration for the scheduling unit.
And that slider bar, that exists today. What will be different with R3?
So for
Okay, R3 is going to have a new, so that there's an algorithm there that builds the schedules now. The new one that's coming in R3 is based on, it has AI in it, so it learns like what the schedule preferences are when you select them and things like that, so it starts learning. So basically though, what it's giving you, the benefit of that is it generates schedules much faster than it has traditionally.
The other part, I guess there's another tool for activity bidding as well, so that can be built on top of it. So you can enable activity bidding and potentially set up bidding for different slots or time off. And that bidding can be set up based on based on seniority. You can actually set up the rules for how you how you configure that fitting. And I want to see if there's configure accrual dates. There is so there's actually places where you can go in. You can say what is it skill? Is it previous time off? Was it based on kind of time worked or start date of the employee in order to kind of give different preferences? You can set up the rules for who you allow to have preference for time off. And that's where the activity bidding can be enabled as part of this. I'm going to jump in just to the client side, finish off, and then we'll open up for more questions. Because I promised that I would give you a little bit of extra time. I'm going to make sure I meet that promise. So let's become agents. Who here has been a contact center agent before? Yeah. All right. Good. So what this is the fun part. When you're here I am as my name now is Becky Oliver. I'm an agent, and I can actually zoom in on this part. Right? Wow. Now you can kind of see things. So when I log in to my PureConnect portal, I can actually see my schedule over here. But through this, I can start to manage my time off. Or my shift trade, which is one of the big things that I don't want to have to go talk to my manager about. Again, my cat's recital. So here I can set up my time off requests. So I can request time off, whether it's a full day or a partial day, vacation, sick time, start and end time of it. If there's any particular notes, let's say cat cycle, I can add that in here. She's like, what did that consist? Time off. Yeah, this is time. So we can set up here and submit the request. And again, we can set up these rules behind the scenes using PureConnect so that we can automatically bring that time off. Now, because we use this AI-based forecasting, it's much more likely that we're going to have more accuracy in terms of knowing whether or not that shift is going to be covered. And as a result, we're going to have more confidence when we either grant or deny this time off. So that's kind of one part, is the requesting time off. The other thing that this enables is this idea of shift trading. So we can search for trades. We don't have any trades posted here, but we can actually look for we can actually post a new trade. So here, we set the date that we're going to be off. We can look at, we can say, this is the time that we're looking to trade for, and then we select the date. And once we've done that, it'll then go into this kind of repository of available trades. So now if I'm an agent, maybe I want to pick up an extra shift. So now I can actually go in and I can build that out. And because of the schedules are more accurate. Sorry, the forecasts are more accurate. The schedules are more likely to hit the service level. We then can work with more confidence in enabling these type of tools to allow for employees to be more engaged and control more of their work and how they work. So that's AI-based forecasting, preference-based forecasting. We'll open up for questions, and then afterwards we'll let people come up and talk. So that question was first. So
second about Facebook. Let's say you have a very limited amount of people with a certain skill, and they start shifting trades. How you kind of make sure that you actually have a German speaking guy on the evening shift?
So that's a really good point. So the trades can only be done for among people who meet the requirements for that queue. So there you can actually set up what the requirements for a particular queue based on the agents. So changes. So agent details. So over which work group is she a part of. So you can only kind of trade among work groups that person is part of, and for the agent group as well. So they have to have the skills that can be for shifts that can be traded. They can't just be like someone's going from help desk to technical skills. Like it's
So it
not.
doesn't really look at the forecast and based on that decide. Because I mean, I might have more German skilled agents, maybe.
Yeah. So if it means that your service level for that particular queue is not going to be met, then you're not going to be able to allow for that trade without creating an exception. So, yeah. I think we'll go in order. Sorry, I was just gentleman behind you and then you.
Okay.
Okay. Yes.
On the agent side in DevCon19, will there be the shift preferences and shift bidding added to it? Those are only currently available, at least in 2023, on the interaction desktop client. Will they be moved into the
we have no plans to move them at this time. Submit that though as a feature request. We have an ideas portal, and we encourage our customers to submit the ideas to the ideas portal, and it's like a crowdsourcing type of place where it's based on AHA, and people can vote on other people's ideas or add their own use cases, and it's being heavily I know there's been some experience perhaps in the past where these things, like I think we used Wiseline before, where it kind of didn't go anywhere, but we have a full-time resource managing the portal every single day. So these are very much being managed a lot differently than they were in the past.
Question up in front.
You mentioned about during the forecasting setup how to identify an AI-empowered forecast, but you didn't actually show how to turn on the AI forecasting in relation to how we're currently using Optimizer today.
Because you're not going to do it as an end user.
Okay.
So we'll do. So just so you are aware what the process is, what happens is there is a $0 sellable item that gets quoted, and and it's called AI, and on PureConnect it's AI-powered forecasting and scheduling, and then it's PCC if you're cloud, and it's PCP if you're premise. That will trigger a workflow, and part of that workflow is the signing of a master service agreement, acknowledging you're sending your data into an Amazon Web Service, because this sits up in our Genesys cloud as a common microservice. And what that'll do is, if you don't already have one, it'll create an org ID for you, and then that generates a client ID, which gets configured on the back end, and then we configure it on the Connect server, and then you're good to go, and it'll be available to you. But
and one thing I didn't demo is the actual process of creating the forecast, which was this plus button, and this is where I had my Microsoft moment just before we started, where it gave me I don't have permission to create a forecast. So within that process would be like selecting the AI-powered forecast.
Okay.
it's just another option in the forecast wizard. It'll say AI-powered, and that's how
Really
you
just a toggle and that's it.
Yes, it's a toggle. And again, it'll show up once all that other configuration on the back end's done, but you as an end user don't have to do anything.
Perfect.
So maybe what we'll do is we'll be around for a couple minutes to take additional questions. But yeah, thanks so much for sticking around for this, and enjoy the rest of the experience.